Battlefield 6 is one of the most anticipated games of the year, and it hasn't even been officially announced yet. Unfortunately, we're seeing a ton of complaints to go along with the hype. That's why today we're going to discuss some of the biggest concerns and why I think they're misguided. All across Reddit, YouTube, and other social media, fans are expressing their concerns with EA's decision to not class lock weapons in the next Battlefield title. These concerns seem centered on the idea that class-locked weapons are an integral part of Battlefield, and without this mechanic, we'll see a massive decline in team play and class representation. Here's the irony though, class-locked guns encourage selfish picks. So if you have somebody who usually plays medic, but they hate whatever gun you've locked them to in this Battlefield, they're going to just play a different class. Now you've lost that medic entirely, but to make matters even worse, you'll have other players that don't like the role of medic that are going to pick medic just for their weapon category. So in a game with class locked weapons, when you see a medic, there's a higher chance that they are going to just be playing it for the weapon choice. They're not going to be giving any thought to reviving, healing, or resupplying you. Now, that issue would be bad enough with the typical 4-class system present in past Battlefield games, but it'll be even worse with the leaked class specializations in the next Battlefield entry. The specialization system uses the support class for both medic and the fire support subclass. The description for the fire support subclass clearly indicates that it's intended to use LMGs, so if weapons are class locked, then medics will also be forced to use LMGs. That weapon category is notoriously slow, often encouraging stationary gameplay, and would be very punishing to use as a medic who needs to quickly navigate the front line and readily swap back and forth between their weapon, ammo box, paddles, and smoke grenades. Another point that I see in support of class locking weapons is that it's going to prevent someone from using a sniper rifle with an ammo box while camping in the back of the map. I'm not sure why this is so often brought up because it's not actually an issue. Sure, you can give yourself an ammo box, but that only goes so far. What the sniper is trading in that situation is their respawn beacon, which is arguably more useful if your intent is to stay in one part of the map for long periods of time. Even if you do run out of ammo before you get killed, you can just redeploy on the beacon and you're good to go again. And let's also not pretend that running out of ammo is going to somehow cause the camping sniper to leave their perch and go play the objective. The last point that I want to touch on in this debate is the fear that without class-locked weapons, the game will inevitably end up in a one-gun meta, where we see little to no diversity in the weapons people are actually using. So having played over 1,000 hours in Battlefield 2042, which has no class weapon restrictions, I could say that this just won't be an issue. Sure, in Battlefield 2042, there is the PP-29, which is considered the meta gun, but there's other meta weapons that span different weapon categories, such as the AC-9, the M5A3, and SVK. Every match that I've played consists of a wide variety of weapons, and I think that's because the majority of players are going to play the gun that they enjoy, rather than worrying about the meta or their KD. Restricting class weapon pairings only adds friction and reduces player agency. In a sandbox-style game that uses the Rindazook as an advertising point, I have a hard time understanding why the player base wants to limit the very same player agency that allowed for moments like that. I'd love to get some more opinions though, so go ahead and leave a comment. Tell me whether you think weapons should or should not be class-locked in the next Battlefield game. Next up, let's talk about the concern that giving stims or self-heals to the Assault class makes medics redundant and discourages team play. Even if Assault players never needed heals from medics again, which I don't think is the case, there's still 2 other classes that need healing. On top of that, stims don't allow you to self-revive, so you'll still have to rely on medics for that one. In Battlefield 2042, I main the Assault class, I use stims, and I still feel reliant on medics for healing. You take damage constantly in Battlefield games, especially if you're pushing objectives. With the 2042 version of stims, you rely on medics to resupply you after you use your single stim, and to heal you between resupplies. Now, the leaked gameplay footage from Battlefield 6 shows a system where the stims might recharge over time rather than needing to be resupplied, and I do agree that that would be a little bit too strong. If you take away stims, you're still going to have selfish players. They're just going to switch to medics so they can keep healing themselves. This happens to some extent in Battlefield 2042 where stims exist, but I can only imagine how much worse the problem would be without them. Stims don't kill teamwork, selfish players do. The solution isn't less flexibility, it's better incentives for working together. Shifting gears, let's discuss a topic that isn't as hotly debated: the plus system, or the ability to hot swap weapon attachments without having to redeploy. From what I gather, the big concerns with this system is that it makes your weapon loadout choice less impactful, or that it creates a one-man army capable of adapting to any situation in the battlefield. After playing with a system like this, I believe that your weapon choice is still incredibly impactful. If you run a high rate of fire, low damage assault rifle that excels at closer engagements, you can't just attachment swap and outclass the slower, heavier damage assault rifles that have better stats for medium to long range engagements. You certainly aren't going to swap your attachments around enough to outclass a sniper rifle with an SMG. While you can't adapt to every situation with the Plus system, it does still give you some level of adaptability that I think can be a fun addition to gameplay. For example, you flank the objective and find yourself ready to stealthily attack. You swap to your suppressor, and now your gun is just a little bit better suited for the situation. I understand why most people seem to dislike it. There's some potential balancing concerns, and there's something to be said about the challenge of making your current loadout work for your current situation, even if it is suboptimal. The Plus system is a nice quality of life feature that I feel augments the sandbox elements of a Battlefield game, but it's not a feature that makes or breaks the game for me. The last major community concern that I want to touch on is the fear that Battlefield 6 is going to have silly skins like Santa Claus. To clarify on this point, I agree with the fans that think that silly skins have no place in the next Battlefield title. That said, I'm cautiously optimistic that EA will avoid that mistake. Everything we've seen from the leaks, the official art, and data mining suggests that the next game is going back to a more gritty or rugged tone. It would be impossible to fit ridiculous skins into that environment without completely destroying it. You could make the argument that this is exactly what happened with Battlefield 2042, but the overall tone of that game wasn't nearly as rugged or gritty as Battlefield 6 appears to be. So until we see otherwise, I'm going to remain hopeful that EA is going in the right direction on this. There are ways that they can monetize with skins that don't ruin the immersion. Time will tell if my hope is misplaced, but for now, I think there's some bigger concerns that we should focus on as a community. So, do you think these Battlefield 6 fears are legit, or are fans just overreacting? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your opinion. If you enjoyed the video, leaving a like would really help the channel out, and don't forget to subscribe if you're interested in more Battlefield 6 content in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.